Hi class. I'm going to demonstrate some techniques that you can use with the charcoal right now for you. I've set up a charcoal table. I'm going to use, to begin, I'm just going to use a round piece of compressed. I'm wearing gloves, as you can see, so I won't get it all over my hands. I just want to show you some, and I've set up a still life. I'll photograph the still life and I will post it with the YouTube link so you can see what I was drawing when I was working on it. I don't want to do both at the same time, but it's a simple still life set up on a table. It is lit by direct light coming from the left-hand side. So let's just explore how the material moves and some ways that you can start a drawing. So one of the manners in which you can start it is, the objects that I'm drawing are a white foam ball, a vase, or a little cup container underneath it. And I'm going to work really lightly first so as to not put too much pressure on the charcoal. Just doing a quick rendering. Instead of working with line, which I can, I'm working more with the side of the charcoal. Putting my base down, looking for shadow, where the shadow is coming from. There's another object on the table. It's a rectilinear scale. I'm going to use the advantage of the side of the charcoal to give myself some straight lines. I like to draw it transparently so that I know what's going on inside my forms. I think it's important for you guys to think that way too. I'm going to think about where the table intersects the two forms. It's on a like an end table. How much space is in front of it? How much space is to the side of it? Now I can see a little bit of my wood floor behind it. I'm going to put that in like this. And I have another box actually on top of, a little metal box facing me. And I'm going to plug that in too while I'm going. Now I'm trying to be careful with the compressed because it gets dark in a hurry. So you don't want to push too hard on it. I'm going to look for a really dark place. I mean, you can. This is a really dark area. I can push it in a little bit if I want. And but it's fairly loose in the way that it moves. And I've got it on my glove. I can travel it with my fingertip too. If I stop, I get the pressure of my fingertip. These are two white objects, so I'm going to stay clear of them for a little while. My wall's white, but there's a shadow cast on it. I'm going to move that a little bit. Be broad with my mark making. And I'm actually filling in the background, because the object is the most white thing in the object that has a highlight on it is the whitest part of my drawing. And right now I describe my gray. This is like 40%. That's 100%. This is more like 40%. Now I've got different ways to move that if I wish to. I mean, this is just a little foam brush. This makes an interesting mark if I want to move it. If I want to soften it, I mean, I could just as easily do that with my hand. If I want to move it around a little bit. I can remove a lot of it. With the kneaded eraser. And the kneaded eraser is the eraser that leaves no grit. If I was to try the same thing with, say, the white eraser, which I believe I have a piece of, yes, I have a piece of white eraser, which I actually cut with a single-edge razor blade. So I trimmed it, and here's the piece I trimmed off of it. So the reason I did this is I can get really exact when I want to go and erase. I can control how much of it I go after, which I think is important for you to think about. But it leaves grit, and grit means you have to figure out a way to get that off your paper, and I'm going to use a brush, without moving the charcoal around too much. And that can be a problem because charcoal is soft and it does move. You can fix it. There's a thing called workable fixative that actually puts an acrylic coating on it that prevents it from moving. All right, now I'm just playing around with the brush a little bit just to move it a little bit more. Now this is a different compressed charcoal. The first piece I used was round. Okay, it's a round piece. The second piece I chose is actually a flat. The flat gives you an edge that's a better edge sometimes. It's a little bit stronger than trying to control a circular form because it's easier to grip. It's got sides on it. Not getting too dark though. You'll notice I'm gonna build it up as I go. Not pushing too hard on the paper. I don't want to challenge the paper very much right now either. I'd rather make marks like this, or actually move my finger, you know, on the surface. And see, I put a line on the side of this. The line on the side of it, I'm actually going to tie into the wooden tabletop. Rather than the white vase or jar. See how easy it is to move around your forms if you're using a flat? You know, if you're using a rounded form, you kind of have to make your own edge. There are other ways to apply charcoal. I thought I'd show you a couple of them. This is a little different. What I've done here is I've taken powdered charcoal, and to distribute it, I've poured in, I don't know if you can see it, some rubbing alcohol. And the reason I pour in rubbing alcohol is it's a great vehicle for the charcoal. The charcoal dissolves into the rubbing alcohol. The other thing that's kind of nice about it, it dries fast. So if I chose to put it on, let's say, let's see, where's a really dark spot? It'll really blend into the page, but the beauty of it is it'll dry quickly. Now where I dripped it though, I'm gonna let that dry. I'm gonna show you where there's a problem that comes across with that. Once it soaks into the paper, it's really difficult to move. Like right now, this charcoal rests on the surface of the paper. This charcoal is actually soaked up into the paper. So I'm just painting this on right now with a soft brush. I can use a paintbrush. It gets to be a very attractive way to apply this stuff. I mean, it's hard to believe that that's charcoal. A different material that we do not have available to us is actually vine charcoal. That's even softer. I mean, you can get it, but I couldn't give it to you at this point. Vine charcoal is basically just burnt vines, and it is the softest of all the charcoals. It will move quite easily. It's easiest to take off a piece of paper, which you notice how much most of that came off. That's still wet and drying. But it's also really good drawing charcoal because it doesn't leave much of a line. And one of the beauties of charcoal is tone. You get really rich, wonderful tones. Let's see what happens when I apply that over the top of that. See how it still keeps the original mark? It's kind of interesting. Another way you can apply charcoal pencil. Okay, the advantage of charcoal pencil is I can sharpen it to a tip. And I can do some very precise work with it. Now, just a general rule of thumb, I'm rushing a little bit right now for you guys to kind of finish this. What I would say is usually the best way to go about this is to let it dry a little bit before you go over the top of anything that's wet like that. It does take a little time for the alcohol to actually dry out. Charcoal pencil, easy to push it from the side. It'll also give you a really nice tip, a really nice edge. Cloth. If you want to move things around a little bit and make it a little bit of a softer mark. Once again, you can go back in. And do subtractive drawing on it. You know, by putting the darker ground down and then picking away at it. I don't know if that's dry enough yet. See, what happens is when you put the wash on, it still moves a little bit, but if you look at what's left, the original mark is still there, and I can't get that. There's no way that's coming out. I can lighten it a little bit, but there's always going to be a little bit of a ghosted image, which I think you can see there. See how it still exists. It's soaked into the paper. So that's a nice way to start one. All right, I just wanted to give you a look at some of the materials. I think I pretty much covered all the material I want to show to you. I also have this, which I talked to you a little bit about. Dry cleaning bag. It's a really nice way to smooth out a drawing. And it leaves little bits of eraser on the surface. So I'm going to tighten this one up a little bit, and then I'm going to come back and give you a second look at it as I go a little further along with it. So, but I wanted to give you a start on how to go about, you know, using your charcoal, not being afraid of it, understanding that there are certain rules and regulations that you have to operate with, but there's lots of different ways, whether it be painting it on with a brush or smoothly applying it, or having it come from a pencil, or from a soft piece of vine charcoal, or from the compressed. If you don't push too hard with the stuff, it does move quite a bit. So it's relatively impermanent.